feel overwhelmed and anxious about money, and they talk about it all the time, but they've never read a single book about money. If you spend more, you don't get better returns. You don't get better anything. In fact, if anything, you get worse returns. People find this mind-boggling. Buying a house is one of the most profound financial decisions that will affect your lifestyle ever. I made more money doing that than I would have owning.
Tell me why you think they should stay and listen to what we're going to talk about today, what they stand to gain if they give us their time.
Whenever someone hears someone talking about money, they get rigid. They instantly think that someone's going to come in and tell them, you can't spend money on lattes, you can't go on vacation, you can't buy any new clothes, save all your money until you're 90 years old, and maybe, just maybe, then you can spend it. And I don't believe in any of that. I think you should spend extravagantly on the things you love as long as you cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't. I think you should live a rich life today and an even richer life tomorrow. And so when you combine money and psychology, you start to understand that there is more to a rich life than just some number in a spreadsheet. People already know they should be saving more. They know about compound interest. They may not know the intricacies, but they understand if they invest some now, they're going to have more later. So what's stopping them? That's been the central question that I'm fascinated with for the last 20 years. That's why when I studied human behavior and persuasion and psychology, I was obsessed with this question of what are the things we know we should do, but we still don't. You can live a rich life regardless of where you came from. You can live a rich life regardless of your income. Now, of course, having a higher income dramatically helps. But just like fitness, we can all improve where we are. And that's what we get to talk about today.
When you talk about the language of money, what do you mean?
I mean, understanding the nuts and bolts of money. So just the same way that we all learn how to drive. We learn the rules of the road, when to use our turn signals. Most of us do not have even the equivalent knowledge of money. For example, the basic language of money would be, what percentage of your income are you saving and why? What percentage are you investing and why? When will you have $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million? And what will that money get you? Because just having $1 million in the bank is pointless. What does it get you specifically? This is the basic language of money. You've got to know your key 4-6 numbers in your life, not many, just a few. But once you understand those numbers, it's like understanding the speed limit. Understanding the speed limit means you understand a lot. There's a rule of the road. If you go too fast, what's going to happen? Why do these rules exist? And these rules are similar in money. You can break them. That's okay. But you got to understand the rules first.
What are those numbers that I need to know?
There's 4 numbers that I really like to track. I track these myself, and these are the numbers I encourage. The first is your fixed costs.
Okay.
Those would be your rent or your mortgage, your any debt payments, groceries, the money that you are spending every single month that is essentially fixed. And the number I recommend for that is 50 to 60% of your take-home pay. So that would be if you're spending 50 to 60% of what you make, what you take home on your rent, your groceries, any debt payments, your car, you're in good shape. Okay. The next one is your savings. That would be roughly 5 to 10%. Savings would be things like an emergency fund, savings for a down payment for a car, things like that. Third is investments. This is where the real wealth is created. And for this, 5 to 10% of take home is fine. Of course, the more you put in, the more you're going to have. And then the fourth category, the one I love the most, is called guilt-free spending. This is going out for cocktails in New York. It's buying a beautiful shirt. It's treating your friends, whatever you love, yoga, 20 to 35% of your take-home pay. So if you're watching or you're listening to this, just take 15 minutes, back of the napkin, jot down your approximate numbers. You don't even have to get them perfect. And you will be able to benchmark how you are spending compared to those numbers. I'll tell you that those numbers tell me a lot. It's almost, if you just show me those 4 numbers of your spending, I can tell so much. I can tell what you love spending on. I can tell what you don't. I can tell what your priorities are. And I can also tell where you are out of alignment. So I'll give you an example. When I ask people, what is your rich life? One of the common answers they say is, I want to do what I want, when I want. I go, oh God, not this answer again. I hear it every day. I go, wow, that's so interesting. So what do you want? They go, most people have never thought beyond a trite answer. So then the next answer I often get is freedom. I want freedom. I go, great, that sounds good. What is freedom? I want to do what I want, when I want. I look at their numbers and I see a huge payment that they're making to a 30-year mortgage. I see debt payments. I see car payments. And I go, now this is interesting. You want freedom, but you have essentially anchored yourself down to not be able to travel or to pivot or to move. How can those two be? How can you reconcile those two? And that dissonance is actually a fascinating moment. I love when we experience dissonance. We all do. I say that I want to work out more, but I don't work out more. Why? And what you'll discover is people often, they simply have never thought about it. What our rich life is, these generic phrases, freedom, flexibility, it's just words. What I really want somebody to say, I want them to go a lot deeper, is to say, I want to be able to travel for 6 weeks a year. I want to go to London. I want to go to New Delhi. I want to go to Thailand because I want to visit my family. That's a good start. If we get even more specific, they tell me what seat on the airline they're sitting on. They tell me where they're eating. They tell me who they're bringing with them. But to simply say, I want freedom, is so vague that when I look at your numbers, there's often a huge incongruity with how you're spending versus what you claim your rich life is.
The popular narrative is, for most people, the minute they get any decent amount of money is to buy your first house. And that's what people do. They take a 10% deposit or a 20% deposit, whatever it might be, and they buy a house. Why is that a poor investment? Why is that a bad thing to do? Because that does kind of sit counter to the popular narrative.
Well, we have to remember, first of all, where the popular narrative came from. In America, if you ask people what is the American dream, the answer is inextricably tied up with a single family home with a white picket fence. That's not an accident. That is the result of decades of messaging. Some might call it propaganda. First of all, most people in the world do not live in single family homes like we do in America. That has caused a lot of issues. But to leave that part aside, this is how most people think about buying a house. They think, grandma bought a house in Austin, Texas in 1970 for $100,000. Grandma just sold it 50 years later for $1 million. Grandma made $900,000. They go, it's the most profitable thing you could do, buy a house. I go, okay, that sounds really nice. Did Granny factor in how much she spent on maintenance for the past 50 years? No. Did Granny factor in inflation and how that affected her return? No. What's inflation? Did Granny factor in the opportunity costs of what that down payment could have been used if invested in the S&P 500? No. And did Granny look at all these phantom costs such as interest on the loan? No. It's not simply the bigger number minus the smaller number. That's wrong. That is simplistic. For the biggest purchase of your life, you've got to go deeper. Again, when I was living here, I kept a very close eye on real estate. And the place right next to me, same square footage, same number of bedrooms, same everything, it would have cost 2.2 times what I was paying in rent. So just to give you an example, if I was paying $3,000 a month, it would have cost about $6,400 a month to own. Okay. I said, you know what? I like renting. If I have a problem, I just text my landlord. I took the $3,400 I would have spent owning when factoring in phantom costs, maintenance, interest, taxes, all that, and I simply invested it. And I made more money doing that than I would have owning.
What about if you're buying somewhere for the rental income?
That can work. So owning real estate as an investment can be part of a well-diversified portfolio if you run the numbers. Right now, there's a lot of hype people go, I'm going to buy a house, and if I don't like it or whatever, I'm just going to rent it out. Okay, fine. But you've got to remember that if your mortgage is $1,000, that's not just the amount you're paying. There's a lot more. In fact, in my estimations, I add 50% to that price. So $1,500 a month, which would include a roof repair happening 19 years from now. We've got to amortize that out. Labor costs, interest, all that. If you can rent it out and make a profit, fantastic. It cash flows, that's awesome. What you discover is that most people who buy a primary residence, the place they want to live in, they buy it because they want it, and then they tell themselves it's an investment. Buying a house can be an investment, but oftentimes it's not. And there are far better, far simpler investments. Here's my key message. I want to make sure nobody misunderstands me. I've been accused of saying buying a house is bad. No, I never said that. In fact, I will buy a house myself one day. And when I do, it's going to be a terrible financial decision, and I'm going to do it anyway. My key message is, for the biggest purchase of your life, you've got to run the numbers. Sometimes buying can be a good financial decision. Often renting can be a good financial decision. Run the numbers and never feel guilty for renting.
As it relates to buying a house, I've always been hesitant because I'm scared really of the point you mentioned about being anchored to a location. So the way that I've kind of justified that away is by saying, well, I'll just Airbnb it when I'm not there, or I'll rent it out if I decide to move to New York or whatever. Mm-hmm. Is there a cost in the opportunity of being less flexible about where you can be, that people don't think about, especially when they're younger?
Yes.
And they're probably a little bit unencumbered by, life.
Yes.
At that point.
Yes. Buying a house is one of the most profound financial decisions that will affect your lifestyle ever. You can sell a car, even at a minor loss, but selling a house involves massive transaction costs and labor that most people don't anticipate. One of the reasons that I rent is for lifestyle reasons. Financial, yes, I make more money renting and investing the difference than I would owning, but also lifestyle. I don't know that I'm going to be in the same place for 10 years, which is one of the key things that I would encourage people to decide before they buy. You want to know that you're going to be there for at least 10 years, because then you can spread all those transaction costs, spread them out over 10 years. They become much more affordable. It's kind of like buying an expensive jacket. If you buy it and you wear it once, that's really expensive. If you buy it and wear it over 10 years, it becomes a lot more affordable. Now take that, multiply it by 1,000, and that's a house. Particularly for young people, I don't give a lot of unsolicited advice. I used to do it when I was young, when I just learned about money, and I realized nobody really wants to hear it. They really don't. If somebody comes to me, they come to my blog, my social media, great. Otherwise, I'm not going around telling people you should do this. Once in a while, though, I get a young person asking me, I'm just about to graduate from college. What advice do you have for me? And at that moment, the best piece of advice that I have is move where the action is. And typically that's a big city. So that would be where there's more jobs, where there's simply more people if you're looking for relationships. And there's a lot of tacit knowledge that happens in big cities. Like, oh, have you tried this? Oh, what have you seen that musical? Have you tried this thing, this idea that's going around? So often surrounding yourself geographically can be hugely rewarding to you as you grow. You can't do that if you bought a house because everybody told you that it was going to be the best investment. And if I were to say, show me where you calculated the numbers that it was going to be a great investment, 75+% of people have never created a simple spreadsheet.
How does buying a house compare in terms of returns to something like investing in the S&P 500?
It's quite poor, actually.
Really?
Yeah, over about 100 years, there's great research showing that it has essentially matched inflation. It's been slightly above inflation. People find this mind-boggling. Again, because they think somebody bought a house for $100K and they sold it for $1 million, so it's $900K. But they don't properly factor in inflation, opportunity costs, phantom costs, all that. It's really hard to factor these numbers in, but it's critical because it's the biggest purchase of your life. I'll give you another example of where people don't properly factor it in. some people pay a financial advisor 1%. They go 1%. It's not a big deal. I'll pay 1%. What they don't realize is that 1% over the course of their lifetime will take 28% of their returns and hand them over in fees. Think about it. If you make $1 million in investing over the course of your life, $280,000 are going right out of your pocket into that advisor's pocket. Now that's super counterintuitive. 1% turns into 28%. How does it work? You can simply go online and search for investment cost calculator and plug in the numbers, add a 1% fee, and you will see. The point of this is that sometimes money is highly counterintuitive, really counterintuitive. It's unlike anything else. If you and I go to sushi right now and we get sushi for $20, it'll be fine. If we get it for $100, what do you think? Probably be a little better, right? And if we get it for $1,000, the fish will have been flown in from Tokyo this morning and it will be served in an absolutely stunning setting. So in other words, you pay more, you get better results. We're used to that. If I spend more on a sweater, it's probably going to have a different type of fabric. More on a car, it's going to look cooler, have cooler features. Money's not like that. If you spend more, you don't get better returns. You don't get better anything. In fact, if anything, you get worse returns. People find this mind-boggling because it's counterintuitive. But in investing, costs matter. In buying a house, you've got to run the numbers because they are totally counterintuitive.
What are the attributes of someone that's probably going to be poor in 30 years in terms of their relationship and their behavior with their money?
Easy. They don't invest. They feel overwhelmed and anxious about money, and they talk about it all the time, but they've never read a single book about money. And there's these deeper attributes they have. Only rich people invest.
They think that.
Yeah. And that's why I'm here. I want everyday people to know, just like me. I started off, my parents immigrated from India. I had no special investment knowledge, but I had two parents who were educated and encouraged me and said, learn this stuff. Here, we'll do it together. And that was a gift. Everyday people can build tremendous wealth, which in and of itself is impressive, but it's even more impressive when that wealth is used to live a rich life of adventure and spontaneity and generosity.
Some of the stats I pulled out from your book, about 25% of people who make $100,000 a year plus are still living paycheck to paycheck. According to a recent survey of millionaires done by the US Trust, 83% of the wealthy say their largest investment gains have come from small wins over time rather than taking big risks.
Yes, this is counter to everything we see on TV, because on TV, it's really boring. What are you going to look at my Vanguard account? Oh, wow, compounding 7% per year. It went down 8% last year and it went up 9% this year. So boring. So we see these cool stories of business owners, and we're both business owners. It is cool. But a tremendous amount of my own wealth will come from low cost, long-term methodical investing.
That's like a rule of life, isn't it? That the real returns, in reality, the great returns come from patience and consistency and things that really aren't sexy. Like, they're not Instagrammable. If I post on my Instagram today, hey, I've got some advice for you guys to become wealthy, and I go, need to invest in this fund, and just leave it there. But if I go, listen, I've got this new NFT collection or cryptocurrency coin that's going to make you 1,000,000% this year, people are going to go all in. That's just like something within the human condition where we want big returns with little effort and today.
We want to get rich quick.
Same with a six-pack. We want the six-pack abs in 10 minutes. We don't want six-pack abs with diet restrictions and 9 months of work. That's not...
And that is why I have a lot of compassion for helping people unlearn some of the messages about money, because we all have them. We all have the equivalent of, I want six-pack abs. But we also have something in life that we've spent time to get really good at. And we know that the secret is basically consistency. If I go ask someone who's an amazing cook, hey, I want to cook like you, how do I do it? What are they going to give me use cinnamon? No, they're going to say, get in the kitchen and cook every single day for 5 years, and you're going to learn about when to use salt and when to cook it for longer. Fitness, you want to ask someone who looks really good or feels really good about their body? they're going to give you some secret workout. No, they're going to say, I show up when I feel good. I show up when I don't. I show up.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being an inspiration and being a loud voice in the conversation around money. I know so many of the people listening to this podcast are completely in the dark about money. And so having these kind of conversations and having the practical roadmap to how we can improve our relationships so we can unlock the future we want is incredibly important now. And I'm sure it will remain incredibly important in the future, because there's going to be a lot of influencers like Instagram and TikTok that are trying to tell us a story about money and aspirations and what we should be aiming at that are unhelpful and counterproductive to our happiness. So thank you, Ramit.
Thanks for having me.
Ramit Sethi discusses the concept of the language of money, emphasizing the importance of understanding the fundamental aspects of financial management. Drawing an analogy to learning the rules of the road when driving, he suggests that many people lack equivalent knowledge about money. The basic language of money, according to Ramit, involves understanding key financial indicators such as the percentage of income saved and invested, as well as future financial milestones like reaching a specific savings goal. He highlights the importance of not just accumulating wealth but understanding how that money translates into tangible benefits. Overall, the key message is that by grasping a few essential financial numbers, individuals can navigate the complexities of managing money effectively. Ramit identifies 4 crucial numbers to track for effective financial management. First is fixed costs, encompassing rent, mortgage, and monthly expenditures, recommended at 50 to 60% of take-home pay. Second is savings, advised at 5 to 10% for emergencies or major expenses. Third is investments, considered a wealth-building category, with 5 to 10% recommended. The fourth category is guilt-free spending, allocating 20 to 35% for personal enjoyment and non-essential expenses. By examining these percentages, individuals can assess their spending habits, revealing their priorities and potential misalignments. He emphasizes the need for specificity in defining one's rich life. Beyond generic terms like freedom, encouraging a deeper understanding of personal goals and desires. Ramit challenges the common belief that buying a house is a sound investment, presenting a critical analysis of the decision. The popular narrative surrounding homeownership, deeply ingrained in the American dream, is questioned as he argues against its financial wisdom. The misconception of a house as a lucrative investment is debunked through considerations of maintenance costs, inflation, opportunity costs, and other factors often overlooked. He shares personal experiences, highlighting the financial benefits of renting and investing the difference. The misconception of a house as a lucrative investment is debunked through considerations of maintenance costs, inflation, opportunity costs, and other factors often overlooked. He shares personal experiences, highlighting the financial benefits of renting and investing the difference. The overall message is to approach the decision to buy a house with careful consideration, running comprehensive calculations and dispelling common myths surrounding its financial benefits.